All right. Well, we are back with another Future Focus weekly update. It is April 5th, Friday, April 5th. And I will, in terms of topics, I've got a whole list of them. We'll see how many I get through today because I want to make sure that I am keeping this a little tighter in terms of timing. So I'm not going to sit and list out everyone. You can look through the show notes afterwards to see what the big topics are today if you want to skip to the different ones. But as some housekeeping items before I get into it, if you have not already, and you could, it would be a huge help to me if you went out and gave a review and a rating to the podcast. If you found this helpful, it just helps people find it and helps me to continue grow this and hopefully be a service, as the stated mission is to help people stay 10 steps ahead and hopefully make sense of a lot of the chaos going on right now. So thank you in advance for those of you who take that action. It's very much appreciated on my end. I'm terrible at asking for help, but this was some feedback I got from someone was, you know what, it doesn't hurt to throw that in every once in a while. I probably won't do it every time. But that said, a lot has happened since last week's update. It's been a little bit of a crazy week, and then I have a couple topics that are a little carryovers from last week. So let's start with the big one that was all over my radar this week and last week. If you have not heard about the Stargate project, again, depending on where your emotional stability is with some of the state of things, maybe you don't want to Google it and look further into it. Maybe you do. I'll leave it up to you. But it definitely does sound like something of science fiction. But what this is it is a proposed $100 billion with a B dollar project that is a partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI on what I'm calling the race to AGI. So this is a big step forward for the two of them coming together and saying, listen, we need to build an AGI, artificial general intelligence. So kind of the nirvana, the apex of the AI world, and where we're seeing a lot of effort going right now. Now, to be clear, the project, the $100 billion is for a data center specifically, not necessarily like if in your head you're hearing $100 billion for a supercomputer and you think it's some super advanced algorithm or machine that's going to be, it's not necessarily that. It's a data center. But really, as you look at this, in my opinion, they're kind of one and the same in that the data center is the circulatory system, I mean, the heart, the nervous, whatever system you want to pick from the body. And it's really, that's what we're talking about here, is it requires a lot of processing power. It requires a lot of data space, storage, requires a lot of stuff, and it takes up space. And so this is what they're projecting it's going to cost for them to get the start on this, which, if I remember right from some of the articles I was looking at, they're really targeting 2030 to have this whole thing in motion. But a lot of people are predicting we're going to reach AGI by 2028. Now, depending on who you talk to, AGI, or artificial general intelligence, means a number of different things. So some people, when they say AGI, they're talking about what they believe will be sentient AI, completely autonomous artificial intelligence. Others simply mean super complex, multimodal AI. So you have to be careful when you read some of these things, because different people are saying different things and different people have different perspectives on how far we'll actually be able to go with this. But one of the things that I thought was a little bit ironic about this partnership coming out of this, and it was originally one of the topics I had for last week that I bumped, was just last week, Microsoft came out and said, you know what, if OpenAI disappeared or something happened to them, we'd be totally fine. We don't need them. We've got the IP and the horsepower. So it was very interesting hearing them say that a week before, and then a week later, it's like, well, and now you're in $100 billion partnership on this. So I think that speaks to, one, some of just the uncertainty. And I think a lot of the things that I watch and listen to about what's happening in the technical space right now is there's a lot of people saying they have all the answers and they know exactly how this stuff is going to all come together. But when you really scratch beneath the surface, there is just a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of things that I think people know need to happen. And I think this is a proclamation of that clearly Microsoft feels so strongly about whatever it is they're going into partnership with OpenAI on, that they're willing to back it with $100 billion, which also, mind you, does make Sam Altman's proclamation that it's going to be about $3 trillion to really get where they need to go. Not that unreasonable when you think about if this one of these first steps is a $100 billion data center, you can start to see how quickly these numbers add up and why it is so expensive. And while, as an end consumer, you may go $20 a month that we're paying for. Yeah, that's just what we're seeing on the consumer. And this does not talk about what it takes to have all the processing power, what it takes to train these complex algorithms, what it takes to manage and sustain them. So anyway, that was just something that, I think is interesting, but also coming off last week, Microsoft saying, yeah, we love OpenAI, but you know what, if they disappeared, we'd be just fine without them. I think this is something we all should be paying close attention to, in that there is this move by some of these big players where they will partner with who they see as smaller companies in their eyes, kind of get what they need out of them, and then they'll keep them around as long as they're adding value to them. But ultimately, they do what they need to do so they could cut bait and move on. And I think that's really just a cautionary tale that anybody watching or listening to this, I know there's a lot of folks that are in my circle who are maybe in the AI startup world. They may be doing some really cool and interesting things. And it can be very tempting when a big dog comes along and goes, hey, we really love what you're doing. We'd love to get behind it and work with you. And especially in those early startup days where money's tight, you're trying to figure out how to make ends meet. You have some big aspirations, but maybe don't have the capital to back it. And along comes somebody else who goes, hey, I'll pay for that. And it can be an easy move to take. And sometimes it is the right move, but some of the wisdom in this is, well, maybe not. And while things seem to be going well with OpenAI and Microsoft to date, we'll see what happens here in the future. But I think the bigger thing that I'm really curious to see where this goes is, first of all, anybody who thinks this AI race is going to slow down, anytime soon, or we're going to, I know maybe what was a year ago or something like that, they were like, hey, we really need to slow down and take a breath. I don't think we're going to see that. And I, in some ways, think it's a little unfortunate that we aren't necessarily pulling back a little bit, but I also understand why, in many regards, a lot of these companies are going, we can't. Everybody is doing this, and there is a massive race towards artificial general intelligence. And when you look at the clock, when predictions are saying 4 to 6 years, so far, if anything we've seen over the past few years has taught us anything, it's that unlike a lot of things where we go, it's going to take this long, and it always seems to take longer. In the AI space, it seems like we throw the cast out there and it ends up being a much shorter reel that we end up pulling in. So I'm really interested to see where we go with some of this advanced AI. I know I've talked a lot about, for the mass population, ChatGPT, Gemini, Anthropic, Cloud 3. These are the more familiar things the consumers are familiar with, but there's some advanced stuff happening behind the scenes. And this is just another indicator in this. A lot of money, a lot of things happening. Going to be interesting to watch over the next few years, but I don't think we're going to have to wait that long to start to see some of this stuff coming to the surface. All right. Transitioning to number 2. This was another carryover from last week. I got a lot of questions and some messages on LinkedIn about this one. The University of Florida took some pretty public heat for this, in that they eliminated a number of DEI positions and appointments in their university system. And there's kind of a bigger conversation happening right now around, is the whole DEI movement dead? Are we backsliding? Are we moving away from this idea of encouraging and emphasizing and incentivizing diversity and equity and inclusion, and kind of taking a step back? It was hard because I did dig into some of the details of this, and there's not a lot of clarity on what the University of Florida is doing. And I know in a lot of these things, this is where I'm slow to react to some of this stuff. You won't usually find me freaking out to headlines because there's always more to the story than it presents. On the surface, I can definitely empathize with the folks who are reacting to this going, oh, great, here we go. We're taking a huge step back in history. I thought we were making some progress. in the early 2020s. Now we're not even halfway through the 2020s and we're already, basically scrapping the whole thing. And well, let me take the flip side of that, and then I will further reinforce why I do have some concerns about this and some of the other things I'm seeing around DEI. Where I think there's more to the story is there is a lot of data showing that a lot of the moves that were taken towards creating a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce and things like that didn't work. So there was a lot of money, in my opinion, recklessly thrown at this for, in some cases, PR games. In other cases, it really was, hey, we want to do the right thing, but we don't really know what to do. So I guess we'll just follow what's going on. And I guess we'll hire these and we'll double the size of this organization. We'll put a chief diversity officer in our organization. And because a lot of people, again, to something you hear me talk about a lot, didn't slow down and say, what are we really trying to accomplish and what's the best way to do it? Everybody kind of jumped on the traditional DEI bandwagon, and they implemented some sort of workforce DEI training that was traditional thing and rolled out. Everybody was forced to clockwork orange through something. And, then there was a new chief diversity officer, and it was, the company logos were changed for every month of whatever, to kind of support different initiatives. And it really was, in many regards, a lot of smoke and mirrors. And so in some ways, I understand where companies and big organizations are looking at, in many cases, the millions of dollars they spent on some of this stuff and said, what do we really have to show for this? Like, has anything changed? Has, the perception of our company, is our employee engagement numbers, like, are we seeing increases in these things as a result of this? And going, no. In fact, some of the data that I've looked into has shown that some of the ways that organizations and institutions were approaching DEI actually had the opposite effect, because they were taking what I would consider reckless paths to try and address this problem. And what it was actually doing, it was pushing people into their silos, pushing them into their tribes, kind of shaming just new groups and saying, well, it's not our fault, it's actually your fault now, which then the other group builds up defenses, and pretty soon you just start mortaring across the way. So I do understand why institutions and organizations are taking a look at what's been done and going, you know what, I don't know that this is the right path. And so maybe we need to cut back on this, especially with some of the economic uncertainty right now. And that's where I don't think it's helpful when you just look at something and go, this group eliminated these positions. And it's like, well, but like, let's look across the whole institution. Like, was this truly just by itself? Was this part of a larger organization-wide thing? Like, what was the growth in the other functions? Was it balancing it? There's just a lot more to it. And I guess being in the HR executive space, I see these things for a lot of the complexity that on the outside, you just don't see. And so if you are in the camp of somebody who's seeing this and are outraged or angry or frustrated or feel like this is just a huge step back, I will go into why I empathize and have some of the same concerns that you do. Well, at the same time, I would encourage you to also slow down a bit, maybe step back and go, you know what? There probably is more going on here than I realize. And it's probably not doing me any good to just get upset and outraged over some of these things. So that's my balancing that side. However, I also have concerns with some of this stuff. And it's because I'm seeing other trends, like the big return to work stuff, like some of the things I'm seeing around. I just read a research article today about the decline in women leaders in organizations. And I don't think that's a healthy trend, which again, I'm not trying to spin people up and go, see, here we go. But I am seeing from multiple different perspectives, there are things that we're starting to kind of go backwards in. And one of the things that's concerning to me about this is when things get hard, which I don't think it's just me based on the conversations that I'm having with folks. We're in a really troubling season right now. It is hard. it is really hard right now. I feel like there are definitely days where I go, why are things that a couple years ago felt not that hard are just really difficult? And I have a lot of different speculations and I see a lot of different factors, but I don't know that there's just a clear answer. And I certainly don't just have an easy solution. So I see that. And I think my concern is when we run into hard times, we tend to fall back to the worst versions of ourselves. We tend to go back to, this is really hard. You know what? It felt like it wasn't so hard when we were doing these other things. So maybe let's just go back to that. And it's like I said, I see that in the return to the office thing. That one baffles me more because the data shows it was working. And so seeing that and going, the data showed that was working, but because it was uncomfortable, we're going backwards. It does raise concern in me that it's like, well, wait a minute. So then what are we going to do when the data shows it wasn't working? And instead of going, okay, maybe that approach didn't work, but we agree fundamentally this is a good thing. How do we maybe pivot and adapt and adjust on things like this? And so because I'm seeing this in other areas, I do have concerns that there is in some spheres a bit of an attitude that DEI was a flavor of the week. It was something that we just kind of needed to do because the cultural moment demanded it. And now we can kind of get back to the way things are supposed to be. And I think that is tragic. And if you listen or watch this and that's your attitude, I'm going to challenge you to think differently because the data shows otherwise. And while maybe the data shows that the current sphere of initiatives around DEI didn't work, the data around diversity and inclusive and equitable workforces does not. And when you get that right, people thrive, as do organizations. And so while you may be disappointed in the way you maybe approached it, do not let that have you start backpedaling on, well, maybe this thing isn't actually really valuable, because that would be similar to the return to work thing, a foolish move where you go, well, the data says 100% conclusively otherwise. So while the path you took may have failed, the destination has not failed. And you better figure out ways to find new and better ways to approach DEI if you're going to do things like, you know what, we're going to cut this out or we're going to take a different direction. You don't just say, we're just going to cut this out, take a different direction. That moves you backwards. You say, the cobblestones that we laid out, yeah, they sunk in the pond. So I think we need to build a different bridge. And that, if that's what you're doing as an organization, if that's what's happening, then good for you. Good for you. Make sure you're explaining that to people. Make sure you're communicating that, because in the absence of information, people fill in the gaps with not great things. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of the reactions right now, is people freaking out because all they're seeing is cuts and eliminations in DEI. And like I said, if those things are happening because you believe that's the wrong path to be marching towards, take another look. If it's because you're taking another strategic look at the bridge that you can build to get there, then good for you, but do a better job of communicating that out there. All right. So I haven't touched on this one because, again, I wanted to talk take a little time to process it. And this one's the TikTok stuff that's going on. And, there is stuff all over the map on this. And I'm trying to remember what podcast I was watching. I was watching it on YouTube. Somebody showed this clip of this person on Capitol Hill talking about how TikTok was, if it goes away, it's taking away so much from society. And it really felt like this person was trying to give their Braveheart moment. And it was like, really? Like we're talking about social media, like we're rallying the troops against freedom. And so, I have mixed feelings on this, like I do on most things. I understand some of the concerns about TikTok. I really do legitimately understand them. Quite frankly, I see a lot of really negative mental health. I see a lot of really negative behavioral things. I see a lot of really not so positive things coming from TikTok. What I don't like is this pointing the finger at TikTok as though it's the only reason for these problems. And if we somehow just eliminate TikTok, it's going to fix the problems. I especially don't like that when we have other big social media players standing behind that, where it's like, wait a minute, you're backing this, you do the same thing. Facebook, really, you're going to be on the like, yeah, let's get rid of TikTok because China. Come on. You're peddling the same wares, and you're going to get on this bandwagon that, oh, they're manipulating data, they're doing all these things. Look at the negative impact of this social media on people. Come on. It's not helpful. Where I struggle with it is this balancing act of one that I've got a person coming on the show in a few weeks where we're talking about cybersecurity in much greater detail. I do have some serious questions about TikTok, their data practices, the way they're handling that data, how it's being used, how their algorithms work, some of the predatory accusations that they have, like how do they answer to those things? I'm not necessarily fully satisfied with the answers we get. Hence some of the skepticism of my thing with it is my skepticism around that isn't just with TikTok. I have the same questions about Twitter or X or Instagram, Facebook, all these other social platforms, even some of the ones that are out there going like, we're the new, the secure, whatever social platform. I'm like, come on, data is worth its weight in gold. And you're going to tell me you're altruistic? Baloney. So I think there should be something that we pursue to try and have greater governance and oversight. Should that be the federal government? That I don't know about. I've been on several podcasts talking about the need for almost a board, that acts independently and has oversight with the technical acumen that can actually look at some of these things, understand what they're doing, understand some of the complexity of this, and say, here's the risks. Here's where we're weighing in on this. And yeah, might we need the federal government to do it, but they should be taking their cues. I watch some of these videos of politicians and some of the questions they're asking, and I just go, this is not helpful to the conversation. And this is the kind of stuff that allows big tech to run circles around folks because they know they're just distracting everybody with stuff that's like, yeah, this isn't really doing anything. I'm also sensitive to the fact that there are legitimate people out there who have built careers on TikTok, and or people who are doing really, really important work using TikTok and helping educate people or helping get messages out there. I think information travels, and in some ways, I think this is dangerous. It travels very fast. But I even think about I cannot remember where this was, but like a person went missing, and these independent TikTok crime journalists had the biggest break in the case because they found his debit card. And I go, wow, and broke the whole thing, and it actually really put some propellant on the case. So I think there's some really complicated components to this. And I don't think just targeting TikTok because we think they have things related to China, we think they're doing things. It feels a little like the whole we're justifying our, invasion of Iraq back in the days because of weapons of mass destruction. And it was getting everybody all hyped up and making everybody go, we can just do anything because we believe there's something to be found. And then it's like, oops, actually, there was nothing there. That's where I do think it feels a little bit similar to that, a little bit of a witch hunt on like, let's take out TikTok because of some other things. And again, there's also the human responsibility. Sorry, if you're spending 4 hours scrolling TikTok, that's on you. And granted, is TikTok maybe making it really easy? Yes. And are there things that we should say, hey, like, are there ways we can help people not get quite so addicted to it? Do you really need to feed into the dopamine hits quite the same? Sure. But at the same time, if you're someone who's listening to this kind of pointing your finger at social media for the bad stuff it's doing, well, you might want to look in the mirror too. And even the parents I talk to who kind of point their finger at social media for all the things, it's like, well, yeah, you're also the parent. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking with my kids about social media usage, and they don't have it right now. And I'm not saying everybody should just go say, don't have social media for your kids. I'm just saying that's a choice we made. We have open dialogues about this. We talk about the implications of these things. And so to just point the finger at big tech as the bad guy, I just think it's a disservice. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I feel like there's a lot going on with this that's just political because we're in election year. So I'll continue to watch it. I'm not, planning on it going away anytime soon, especially since it's easy enough to get around with a VPN, even if they did block it. Not that I'm advocating you do that. I'll put a big parental warning up on the video. Not saying that NordVPN or something like that. Not saying that that's what you should do if it's something that's really important to you, but saying it's a pretty easy thing to get around if you really wanted to. I think the other thing, though, going back to kind of the Stargate thing with Microsoft saying, hey, we could cut ties with OpenAI if we really needed to, is be careful about how much stake you put in anything that you're getting for free. I mean, really, and even things you pay for. Just because you pay for something doesn't necessarily mean that it's a promise and it's guaranteed to you. But I think about people who go, well, I built a whole social media brand around TikTok. Maybe you should have diversified a little bit. If your whole world's going to implode if TikTok goes down, I understand that that's really hard, but this stuff's happening. Maybe focus on how do you diversify your brand, or how do you, really build a marketable skill set? Because hey, I'm not going to have time to get to it today pretty clearly, but being an influencer, while it's kind of the number one thing the next youngest generation wants to be, it ain't all it's cracked up to be. And so if you're building a career and building your wealth and it's all tied to having a TikTok influencer account, let's just say, is probably not the wisest move, because that can be taken from you real quick. And this is just an example of that. So if that is you've got some time to maybe get in front of it. All right, I'm going to stop after this one. So this last one I have was somebody had shared with me a bunch of articles, and it actually came from a number of different people, about chatbots and mental health, and how there's this rising trend of chatbots being used to support people's mental health and therapy. And what's interesting is a lot of these articles where this is really coming into play is it's being used on millennials and Gen Z who are struggling because of technology. And I'm not laughing at the fact that there are people who are legitimately suffering. So please don't get mad and don't send me emails and be like, are you seriously laughing about? I'm not laughing at the people who are genuinely suffering on this. I couldn't help but kind of almost shake my head and almost a chuckle of sadness that it's like, why are we thinking that a problem that was largely not necessarily created, but definitely accelerated and exacerbated massively by an addiction to technology, and a technology that shapes, molds, and manipulates your cognitive development and your mental health? Why would we think that the right solution to this is a piece of technology that research shows, go listen to last week's, research shows it causes emotional dependence and can result in mental health problems? I'm not going to go on record saying that there is absolutely no value or no benefit to using chatbots to help people's mental health. I'm not going to say that, because I think I can, even in my head, think of specific situations where you might go, I can see where this might be helpful, applied in the right thing, under the right governance, with all these other things. But just look at history and look at social media and go, really? We don't do this. And I just did an interview this week with a behavioral scientist where we dug into some of this stuff, and we're going to dig into it. I'm going to have him back to talk more about this othering and polarization, and how cognitive science helps inform why we do this. But this is literally history about to repeat itself. We have a mental health crisis, largely accelerated and exacerbated by misuse of technology. And The suggestion and the solution to solving it is to throw more potentially harmful technology, untested technology. And you know that what's going to happen is there's going to be people that, in the name of chasing the almighty dollar, are going to stand up, and they probably already exist. I'm sure people are going to send me links to these ones afterwards, which is go ahead, because I'm always curious on this. But I guarantee there's already like, hey, sign up for $9.99 a month for the AI therapy and get your therapy. And that's the kind of stuff that people are going to, you know what, I am really depressed and I'm struggling with finding connection and purpose and all these other, oh, wow, like Calm now has an AI therapist that I can add to my Calm app that's going to help me fix this. And then people are going to do it, and people are going to make loads of money off this. And we're going to end up with the same, if not a worse problem, because what's going to happen is, if we're not careful with this, people are going to go, yeah, I tried that whole therapy thing. It didn't really work for me. And you're going to go, wait a minute. What do you mean you tried that whole therapy thing? Well, I added the add-on to my, meditation app that gave me a chatbot to talk me through my toughest moments, and it didn't work. So I think I'm going to go back to stuffing my emotions down and not dealing with my like, what? So do I think chatbots are going to solve the Gen Z and millennial mental health crisis? No, I do not. In fact, I think if anything, these things are probably going to cause a lot more problems than they solve. I also will not say that I think there's absolutely no benefit and we need to bring out the ban hammer, and that I don't think that's helpful either. But I think we need to do more to really look at how do we help people properly address what's going on, both from a mental health, but also just from a behavioral, from a cognitive and a behavioral standpoint. How do we help people build meaningful relationships? How do we reconnect with one another? How do we focus on vulnerability and honesty and transparency in human relationships? How do we solve some of these bigger problems at the root of it, instead of standing up an AI app that sounds like a really quick fix because we go, well, mental health, you know what helps mental health? Therapy. You know what's a heck of a lot faster and cheaper and easier than a therapist? An AI bot. Like, I'm perfect. Like, let's do that. This kind of thinking doesn't get us to healthy places. And so with this one in particular, I mean, if you're struggling and you're really finding benefit, I don't want somebody to listen to this and go, oh, I better steer clear of this. But I think you would be much better suited if you're really struggling with some mental health stuff. That's okay. I mean, I've been there and I've sought help for stuff, and that's okay. And I think if we have more people that say it's okay to not be okay, just get some help and work through it. But then also at the same time, because therapy can also become a crutch. I mean, that's the thing, like therapy in and of itself can also not be helpful. And then you can become dependent on that instead of actually addressing the problems that have you talking to the therapist in the first place. So I think that's where we got to think beyond just kind of the short-term solution to the bigger, more complex, nuanced problem that we're trying to tackle, and figure out, hey, how do we think of holistic solutions on this and not try and stand up some sort of AI quick fix? Because I can tell you right now, it's not going to work. It's not going to give you the results that you want. And if anything, we're going to see even bigger problems than we have already if we're not careful. So with that, rather than going long, because the next one is kind of a big one, and I've got a couple other topics already slated for next week. So with that, I'm going to wrap this one up. Hopefully this weekly update has been helpful for keeping you kind of on top of some of the latest happenings right now, but not only just what's happening, how to process the nuance and complexity behind it, how to think about them critically, because I think that, if anything, is what we need more of, is reflection, critical thinking, and intentionality. So I hope we found this helpful. Again, thanks for all of you who listen. Thanks for all of you who send stuff and share your thoughts, send the feedback. It's always helpful to know that I'm not just talking into a microphone to nobody. So thank you for that. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We will see you next week.